coming today. I'm Rick Long, Nancy's son-in-law. She was the best mother-in-law that you could ever imagine, and there's no doubt there will be a large hole left with her passing. One of the things that I really enjoyed about Nancy was her sense of humor. She could always make me laugh. And so I was reminded of this when I was going through one of her file cabinets, and I found a story she had written. It's a true story, but she had written it maybe for a writing seminar or something. And so I thought I'm going to read that story for my portion of the service. What sort of man would leave his bride at a filling station as collateral? Well, thereby hangs a tale. When my husband and I were on our honeymoon, we left our motel one evening to go out to dinner, but stopped to fill the car with gas on our way. After the car was filled, my new husband discovered he had left his billfold back at the motel. What to do? Being a responsible and law-abiding man, he gallantly offered the filling station attendant proof of his determination to pay his debt by leaving his blushing bride at the station as collateral. The bride, believing her husband must know best, followed into the less than appealing office of the station, where she found a slightly grimy chair. The attendant, being equally uncomfortable with what must have been an extraordinarily infrequent occasion, gallantly offered the bride a copy of the daily newspaper to read while waiting. It may have been worrying him just how long he was going to be responsible for this young woman, who for all practical appearances had been abandoned. What should he do if the new husband, God forbid, never returned? But the responsible and law-abiding husband did indeed return with his billfold to pay his debt and to collect his bride, who was really worth more than a tank of gas. And everyone felt relief, probably the attendant most of all. So to answer the original question, who would leave his bride at a filling station as collateral? A future banker would, but just for a very short time. Okay, for the service today, we're going to have a celebration of the chapters of Nancy's life. So Scott Ross is going to start us off with chapter 1.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm so gratified to see everyone who's here. People from, moms growing up, all over, but notwithstanding the overflow crowd, we do not have door prizes today. So you will not need to check under your seats for a number. I'm Scott Ross. I'm Nancy's son, and I was always Mom's favorite son, after my brother-in-law, Rick.
True.
Mom's unusually brief illness left little time to practice Mom's speech, so I hope you'll forgive me for relying too much on my iPad. I authorized Scott to channel my sentiments, speak on my behalf, and in my voice. I'm sorry to miss this gathering by only a week because I expect people to say I was wonderful. As you may have heard, I donated my body to the medical school at Des Moines University, so I'm otherwise occupied. I hope you'll not linger on the fact that I literally made it into medical school through the back door. It was 120 degrees in the shade the day I was born, July 13th, 1934. Wymore, Nebraska did not have a weather, or at least that's what everyone said. Wymore, Nebraska did not have a weather station, so I can't prove it either way, but it was the hottest day in Nebraska history up until then. Uncle Doc told my parents not to go to the big brick hospital in Beatrice. Too hot. Better to stay home Air-conditioned hospitals were a thing of the future, so Uncle Doc instructed my dad to hang a white bed sheet on the side of our house and spray it with a garden hose to cool things down. Logical, but I suspect the primary benefit was to keep my cheerfully energetic father out of the way. My parents, brother Bill, and I lived in the McCandless house in Wymore until I was 3. In Wymore, they didn't bother with street addresses in those days because everyone knew who used to live in your house and they called it by that name. We moved to Lincoln to a house that did have a street address, 1901 Pepper Avenue. I adored that place. A red brick house on a corner lot with a tree I could easily climb and a wide side yard where Bill and I could play. I attended public schools in a happy home where I enjoyed the love and company of my parents, brother, and grandparents. Scott can confess the naughtiest thing I ever did growing up. My best elementary school friend, Judy Lowe, and I were walking home on a winter day. She was laughing at me and made me mad. I was wearing a pair of rabbit fur mittens and stuck one of them into Judy's mouth to make her stop. It worked. The remainder of our walk home was pretty quiet as Judy picked hundreds of microscopically fine rabbit fur hairs off her tongue. I chose Grinnell College, where I studied to maybe become a physical therapist. Later in life, my elementary school age granddaughter, Katie, asked what I studied in college. I said I majored in PE. Her eyes grew wide. I didn't know you could major in that. Apparently she couldn't picture me playing college-level dodgeball. This raises a sensitive subject. By the time I turned 14, I'd grown to 6 feet tall enough to be one of the tallest players in Lincoln if there were girls' basketball teams in the 1940s, which there weren't, much to my relief. My height often embarrassed me, and despite a long lifetime, I never developed a wisecracking answer to the question whether I was good in basketball. I wasn't. My height meant I had to shop at a women's store in Omaha called Tall Togs, or make some of my own clothes. I had to wait for the current generation of young women to more commonly reach my height. I was ahead of my time. During my junior year, I went to a party in Omaha for Grinnell students. It was the luckiest night of my life because I met a man named Bob Ross who could always make me laugh. He was a Grinnell graduate from a couple years prior. We married in September 1956 following my graduation, and the laughs lasted for 39 more years. Bob's cheerfulness masked strength demonstrated in a quiet determination to make the best of everything. He didn't criticize and he didn't complain, despite having obvious reasons to do so. Even as Bob's health declined, he remained chronically optimistic. That drove me crazy sometimes. But he taught me a valuable lesson. You only have to think you're lucky to actually be lucky. We moved to Atlantic, Iowa, where our son Scott was born in 1958. He made me the person of my dreams. I always wanted to be a mom, and Scott granted my wish. As a rookie mom, Scott and I suffered through all kinds of my mistakes, but he was a hearty, forgiving, and cheerful child. We moved from an apartment in Atlantic to a house in Harlan, Iowa with cornfields immediately in both the front and back. Bob and I couldn't know it at the time, but we had landed in the perfect place to enjoy our happy marriage, raise children, and make steadfast friends. A newcomer to Harlan, I was ripe for the picking. Opportunities to involve myself in our community engulfed me. I once complained to Bob how busy I was. His response? Lucky you. Anne came along in 1962, Lynn in 1965. Anne has always been calm, wise, and logical. Lynn has never been either calm nor acutely logical, but she has always made us laugh, which may be the best quality of all. They each brought their own joy to our house, with the cork floor in the family room that crackled underfoot. A fireplace burned most fall and winter Sunday afternoons. The green couch, upholstered in vinyl, lulled us into napping, despite knowing we'd wake up a sweating mess. We loved the cocoon there, just the five of us. We welcomed frequent visitors who came to our unlocked back door and poked their heads in to shout, "Bob? Nancy?" They didn't have to say their names. We recognized their voices and called them by name to come on in. It always pleased me when our children's friends showed up to sit down and join us at the dinner table to chat. Our kids said they felt comfortable having me spend time around their friends and that Bob and I didn't embarrass them. I enjoyed my children and their friends at every age and stage. I have prohibited Scott from listing my volunteer activities, club affiliations, and awards. Boring. I wanted Scott to convey who I was, not what happened to me. But everyone seems proud of my being Harlan's first city councilwoman. I was appointed in 1975, but later ran unopposed for a subsequent term. While I won by a large majority, I've always wondered who the half dozen or so people were who voted against me. Not bitter, but I may have some insight from my current post. In Harlan, I often wore Levi's, sipped a Coke in an avocado-colored plastic cup, preferably cooled with clear, not cloudy, ice, and nibbled on York peppermint patties. These are unpaid endorsements, but I did live to 91. Our kids went away to college and on to their adult lives, during which they each found terrific spouses. Anne first, with Rick Long, the kindest, gentlest, and smartest man this side of Bob. Scott went next and found Margie, who is whip smart, resourceful, and shared my love of quilts, though not my snoring at a quilt convention we attended together. Margie and Rick lost their moms way too early, and Bob and I vowed to treat all of our children's spouses as if they were our own kids. I hope they feel we lived up to our vow. Bob left the party too soon in 1995 due to illness. I could not have chosen a better husband nor offer better advice than to find someone with whom you find easy laughter. Lynn's husband, Tom, arrived after Bob had departed the scene, but I enjoyed him as much as Rick and Margie, acknowledging that corralling Lynn's energetic enthusiasms was a brave undertaking. Bob would have been proud of Tom's intelligence and patience, but envious of his fishing boat. Though I lived most of my life in a town of 5,000, I never felt confined. The Des Moines Register, Life, and Time magazines, television, and public radio brought the world to our home, but it was really books from our public library that transported me to the world outside our small farm town. I treasured quiet time after Bob and the kids had gone to bed to enjoy good books. Much as I loved my almost 50 years in Harlan and my many friends there, in 2009, I moved to West Des Moines to live close to Ann, Lynn, and their families, and enjoy bright lights and big city living. Watching grandchildren Sarah, Adam, Davis, and Harper grow up was one of the happiest things in my life. Katie and her parents ensured we spent plenty of time together, and we always enjoyed our trips to Minnesota, including our 4 a.m. Black Friday shopping expeditions. I lived almost exactly 30 years as a widow, but I did not feel alone. Of course, I had Ann and Lynn and their families nearby, with Scott on the phone most days each week, but I also felt grateful I could make so many close friends at Edgewater, starting at age 75. Of course, I would have wished for Bob to remain with me, but my kids and friends cared for me in more than equal measure to the care I gave them. On one of the final evenings of my life, Lynn commented we were 5 lucky ducks. I corrected her that we were so many more. I was thinking of my great-grandchildren, Noli, Archer, Fern, and Hal. My health failed really quickly, and that deprived some of my grandchildren and great-grandchildren one final visit, but I prefer they remember me from Camp Nana, and where we made soap, fruit pizzas, and spaghetti pies. I now know the truth or fiction of a life everlasting and lots of other earthly mysteries you'll just have to solve for yourself. But I can offer some advice. Love your children fiercely and spend as much time as you can with people who are generous and kind. I've read there's no success except spending your time as you wish. While I tend not to think of my life in terms of success or failure, considering it that way persuades me I led a remarkably successful life. I spent it with an adoring husband, 3 beautiful children, spectacular grandchildren and great-grandchildren, steadfast friends, and more worthwhile things to do than I could cram into each day. I had a good, long term at bat, and I wouldn't trade with anyone. I was one lucky duck.
And I'm chapter 2. I'm going to say some things, what it was like being a part of the Ross family growing up as an outsider. I do want you to know that Scott, who I haven't seen for years, shared his speech with me beforehand, and Lynn sends me a text and says, "Do you want to see Scott's speech?" I said, "No, it's okay, he already sent it to me." Well, he didn't show it to us. Brothers. Anyway, I want you to know I did not read it, and the reason I didn't read it is I do quite a bit of speaking, and I think sometimes if you read someone else's speech, you don't mean to, but you start to make it kind of the same. I did not read yours, but just wait.
Okay.
Obviously, I think I fit in because a lot of the comments that you had to say, I either thought of scratching it off or just repeating it. So anyway, my memories cannot include, of course, just Nancy. I graduated from high school with Ann in 1980, so my memories obviously include Bob too. We're here today to talk about Nancy, but I can't help but talk about Bob as well. If you're a friend of a Ross kid, raise your hand. All right, you're my audience. Nancy was a cool mom. You did not have to be a classmate of a Ross kid, but that did help. Later in life, I became friends with Lynn, and I just now am getting reacquainted with Scott. And you're my sister's classmate, Becky. If you were a friend of a Ross kid, and filling out forms like we always had to as a kid, if you needed to put down family address, you could put down 2002 Willow Street. That's the Rosses. You could use that. You could even name Bob or Nancy Ross as a parent or a person to contact in case of emergency. And they would have shown up. They would have. They would have gone to an emergency room. They would have gone to a parent-teacher conference. So it's not all about you three, okay? If you were in a band, you knew her as the uniform lady. So those uniforms were ugly. Is Mr. Lawson here? I'm sorry if I offended you, Mr. Lawson. But they were ugly uniforms. Anyway, she was in charge of getting everybody fit, and that's a lot of kids to do. She was also with Girl Scouts, and today, girls and boys have so much to do, so many activities. But when we were growing up, there weren't a whole heck of a lot. And I was in Girl Scouts, so I was in that, everyone that's here, and of course Ann and Lynn. And we stuck through it till we were seniors in high school. It sounds weird today, but that was our core group of friends, and it was fun. We did a lot of great stuff. And Nancy was part of that memory for me. I didn't know it until Ann shared it with me, but she did the same thing for Boy Scouts. So lucky Scott. Yeah. So that was a way of involving not just her own children, but the children of Harlan, and we appreciate that very much. Ann's birthday parties were awesome. I remember one in particular, and actually so did Jackie Petchy. She sent some thoughts with me. There was one in particular, you go to the Ross house, and if you know their family room, it was off the swimming pool area. There were strings, it was like a spider web. Do you remember that? You had to follow the string to your gift, whatever it may be. But who does that? I thought that was amazing. Here I am, 63 years old, and I remember that party. She also had amazing snacks. One of them was Texas sheet cake. I still have that recipe. And I love to bake. That is my love language, is cooking and baking. And I want so bad to instill in my own children and their friends that feeling I had at the Ross house. And by the way, like Scott said about Nancy's home growing up, yeah, whatever your address is, it's the Ross house. That was a great house to raise the kids. Not only was she a cool mom, because that's all the stuff I cared about. Growing up, that's the stuff you care about, you know. I lived out in the country. I can go to Ann's house after school and get something to eat, or watch TV or whatever, a soap. But I also now have come to appreciate more of what that woman did in our community. And if she were my generation and in Harlan, I don't doubt for a moment we'd be the tightest of chums. I could be like her and Mary Finley. I know it's not Finley anymore. I've been gone too long, so I apologize for not knowing your new last name. New, as in probably, what, 30 years? Anyway, my point is, I know for a fact that she was also a woman of action. I am personally affected by one of them. The Hillside Nursery School. Some people call that preschool. When we were little, it was nursery school, and I didn't know it at the time, but we were the inaugural class. And Jackie Petchy sent me a picture of Ann Ross, Jackie Petchy, Susie Larson, and Leon Maupin painting. And it was at Hillside Nursery in 1966. We were the first class. It may not be on my resume, but it certainly is something I'm very proud of. And another person who was a member of that inaugural class who is like a rocket scientist, literally, is Jerry Sellers, and he wants me to also give his condolences to the family. He told me, he said, about Hillside Nursery, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with that first step, and Hillside Nursery School put us on the right path. Here we are this many years later, and it seems like, whatever, everybody has preschool. Not then. This was brand new, and it's a pretty big deal. By the way, Jerry says, thank you for selling him your B&O speakers in high school. Everyone wanted to know if it was going to be live streamed. I said, I don't think so. That allows me the freedom and the liberty to say what I want. Another thing she did that shows that she was a woman of vision was the Harlan Recycling Center. I didn't know enough about it. I didn't want to have to tap the kids. I know they're busy. They've got all of you to talk to. They're grieving the loss of their mother. I just thought, Susie, do your own research. You know how to research. Try Googling it. You will find nothing. Fortunately, I did not find Nancy Ross within the same sentence as garbage. But unfortunately, there's also nothing out there about the history. So I had to relent and text Ann. I said, all right, Ann, give me a little more. And so she helped me fill in some of the blanks. She started this in 1971. People would drop off all kinds of newspapers, cans, and glass. And once again, that you guys might think, wah, 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 wah. This is not a big deal. It was then. And volunteers would help sort it out at some obscure building that the Ross children cannot remember exactly where, but I've decided it's east of the Dairy Queen somewhere. Yeah, some people are saying yes, that's right. And they would sort it out. Ann has a really vivid memory, which I thought would be fun to share. When enough recycling stuff was gathered, they would take a big dump truck to Omaha. And she said one time she got to go with her mom on the dump truck. They drove on the scales, they emptied their contents, and then they had to get back on the scales so you could see how much was on there. She's not sure if her mom was driving or not. I'd like to think not, but she's not sure. But Ann said, I was in awe. I believe my mom could do anything. She said, my mom was a badass. Oh, well, she didn't want me to say that, so I won't. I did. She said it, I repeated it. And I thought it was kind of cool. She said, "You will note today when we're finished with this celebration that there will be no plastic plates or silverware anywhere today." That's a little touch of Nancy. Another thing that Nancy did that shows she was a woman of action. She was on the grievance commission. Now I don't think I'm being recorded, so I don't have to worry about this being repeated anywhere. It's her naughty lawyers. When lawyers don't do what they're supposed to do, there's a process, and there should be, as any profession, there's a process to make sure some disciplinary action takes place if necessary. And there's a lower level that actually does the investigation. That's called the Attorney Disciplinary Board. And if they decide, yeah, this we need to look into, we need to actually have a trial, then it goes to the Grievance Commission. Nancy served on that from 2005 to 2011, and it was my dad who named her to that. And I think it's kind of cool. I did not know she was on that. I was a little busy in life doing other stuff when that was going on. But I found out because as Chief of the Iowa Supreme Court, I named Lynn on the ADB, the Attorney Disciplinary Board. And I thought, isn't that full circle? And I've always thought that my dad has been my mentor, and if he thought Nancy Ross was the right person to review these very important cases, it's ironic that I too thought their daughter would be really good in that same capacity. Here's a Harlan City Council, I was going to say that. I know for firsthand what a labor of love it is for a Harlan resident to do something like that. My husband's sitting over there right now. He is our current mayor in Harlan, has been for about 4 years. He was on city council for about 9 years before that. He is a way bigger deal in Harlan than I am. Way bigger. I can't fix your sidewalks. No. But to be Harlan's first woman on the council, that is really cool. And once again, to some people, to a younger generation, that may not seem like a big deal. But there's always somebody who has to be the first. And how many times have I already mentioned it was Nancy Ross? That accomplishment will be remembered at the next city council meeting. The mayor's going to make sure of that. Nancy was a rabid reader. She was on the Harlan and State Library boards, which I did not know at the time she was serving on those, but I cannot say I am the least bit surprised. Her love of reading made an impression on me as a young girl and friend of Anne's. I never saw anybody check out so many books from the library, return them timely, all read. The only time I've ever checked out books at the Harlan Library was when it was an assignment by Mrs. Clausen. Not kidding. So I was impressed by that, and I know now that made her so worldly. She knew the things she should know as a mom. She was a good mom. But she also knew things that really made her unique. And I think it was from that rabid reading of hers. Did she continue to love to read? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So in closing, as Scott mentioned, I had understood that she did not want many of her accomplishments mentioned today. So although you may have promised her you wouldn't, I did not. So I could do that. But I do know from knowing this family my whole life, well, since I was 4 and met Anne in preschool, nursery school, that I believe her proudest achievement are her children, Scott, Anne, and Lynn. I went undergraduate school to Judson College at Elgin, Illinois, and I had a professor named Professor Shea. And he said, all right, everybody, listen. Take notes. I'm going to give you the magical one thing. This is all you have to do as a mother and a father. This is it, to guarantee to win the parenting lottery. One thing. And of course, the room was like, what? Love each other. Isn't that true? It doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or not. If you love each other, your children are going to pick up on that. And I think Nancy and Bob definitely showed that in spades. They were a fantastic couple, a fantastic set of parents, and their children are exhibit A of that, A, B, and C. Scott, Ann, and Lynn, you are not the only beneficiaries of your mom's life on this earth. Your friends, all of us, were beneficiaries of that as well. So scooch over, Ross kids, because she was everyone's mom in Harlan. We were all lucky ducks to have been in her orbit, and she will be missed deeply.
Thank you, Susie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Ross Schneider, and I'm Nancy's middle granddaughter, sandwiched smack between Sarah and Adam Long, and Davis and Harper Cope. To us, Nancy was Nana, and as a grandmother, she was perfect. As I think back on my favorite memories with Nana, it's hard not to start with Camp Nana. Each year, Sarah, Adam, and I would spend a week in Harlan, and it was the highlight of every summer. The first day of camp always included a trip to the Harlan Hy-Vee, where each of us was allowed to pick our own box of cereal. Cinnamon, it was exciting. Cinnamon Toast Crunch was my pick. Adam always went for the Reese's Puffs, and I believe Sarah would choose Honey Bunches of Oats. 4 years my elder, Sarah was my idol in all respects, except for her selection in cereal. That one didn't have enough sugar. Our grocery trip always took the better part of the afternoon because everyone in the store stopped Nana to chat. She was the mayor of Harlan, as far as we were concerned. Camp Nana days were spent swimming at the Tremmels pool, making soap in Nana's kitchen, or taking laps of the golf course, collecting cans to redeem for a treat at the local drugstore. The one I remember most coveting was a pig keychain that pooped when you squeezed it. That one took a lot of 5-cent redemptions. In our quest, more than twice, Adam and I got the golf cart onto just 2 wheels. And this may actually be the first that Nana's hearing of that, so sorry. But we lived to tell the tale, and our pig keychains were more than ample mementos to remember the summer by. Dinners included spaghetti pie, fruit pizza, and handballs, and most nights ended with a walk down to the Dairy Queen at the end of Country Club Drive as the fireflies began to flicker and frogs croaked in the cool summer night. Over time, Sarah, Adam, and I grew up and aged out of Camp Nana as our summers filled with sleepaway YMCA camps, sports practices, and friend activities. But that didn't diminish our relationship with Nana. She grew with us. Nana had a remarkable way of connecting with each of us, no matter our age or interests. Around the same time as our Camp Nana graduation, Davis and Harper entered the scene, and their magnetic pull must have been awfully strong because shortly after their arrival, Nana decided to move from Harlan to West Des Moines. Throughout their childhoods and teen years, Nana was a constant presence, from scouting awards to state tennis tournaments. She relished Davis's tableside stories and root beer reviews, and shared a love of singing with Harper. As I recall, Harper and Nana's rendition of Anna Kendrick's Cup Song stole the show at our 2013 family lip-syncing competition. I've always felt so proud to be Nana's granddaughter, maybe never more so than at my middle and high school grandparents' day every year. The day before Thanksgiving, students were encouraged to bring their grandparent to class with them, and teachers would host special programming to include the grandparents. Nana attended every year without fail. My favorite Grandparents' Day moment came my junior year of high school. My AP history teacher asked each student-grandparent duo to bring in a white elephant gift for the day. Nana and I scrounged up a broiler pan that had been collecting dust in my mom's kitchen and wrapped it carefully in nice paper. Much to our chagrin, the heavy, large, beautifully wrapped broiler pan became the hot ticket of the white elephant exchange. Once all the gifts had settled with their rightful owners, David Crow, a popular hockey player, opened the wrapping paper, and we watched in glee as his face dropped. "What the heck is it?" he asked. Nana and I couldn't answer him because we were laughing too hard. I can still feel the pride I felt walking into my classes with Nana by my side every Grandparents' Day. She was so smart, well-read, nice, and fun, and she was so much better looking than any of the other grandparents. And I loved how proud she was of me. That mutual admiration we had for each other never went away. As I've grown up and become a mom myself, I've gained a new appreciation for Nana. If a parent's success is measured by the adults they raise, Nana earned an A+. My dad, Ann, and Lynn could not have formed a more powerful trio than the one we witnessed in action this past week. I can only hope to impart the same sense of generosity and gratitude to my son, Hal. I'll miss a lot about Nana, the big things and the small ones. Maybe most of all, I'll miss just picking up the phone for a quick conversation. She'd open every call the same way every time. "Hello, Cupcake," as if to suggest I was the most important and exciting thing she could imagine in that moment. And I truly believe I was. Every conversation with her was special. She was funny, empathetic, present, and deeply curious. I'll miss talking through Hal's latest developments and our latest reads together. I'll miss a lot about Nana. Things will not be the same without Nana at the Ross table with us. I feel so grateful for her to have been there for my almost 34 years at the table, and I know that her presence will live on in each of us. We are forever grateful to her for showing us how to listen and how to love. We will take her example with us forever. Lucky us.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not sure how anyone follows this. This is a wonderful crowd in honor of Nancy. And I am a late in life friend of hers. And I'm going to try and sketch out a little bit, only a tiny bit, of her life here at Edgewater. And I've seen the theme. Whoops, dropped my Kleenex, and I might need that, so I'm going to pick it up. Sometimes we are all just lucky ducks. That phrase has been used a lot these days, and Nancy characterized her own life that way. I can't think of a better way to explain Steve's and my luck at landing at Edgewater in 2018. Way too early, said our friends. On the other hand, our 2 adult children were thrilled that we were making decisions they would not have to make. So imagine we're newbies here, trying to figure out how we fit in. How we fit in somewhere, anywhere. In our first week, we ventured to the terrace to eat in the evening, and 4 women were sitting on what was then called the train. Picture banquet seating along a wall, table for 4 on this end, table for 4 on that end, and in the middle, an unoccupied table for 2. At one of the 4 tops sat Jean Ramos, Sonny Dugan, Cindy Holman-Schumann, and Nancy Ross, who said, "Come join us." We moved the table for 2 to be adjacent to theirs and created a table for 6. We had a wonderful time. Can you imagine our good fortune? As serendipity would have it, we all lived on the 3rd floor. Now we're new kids on the block, and we landed on a great block. Nancy and Jean were pioneers, the name given to people who moved to Edgewater when it opened in 2009. This was the beginning of our long friendship. Among our Herwig interests were World Topics, a group which still meets on Thursday morning and was then led by Roger Hogo and by Nancy in the winter months when Roger and Sharon went to Arizona. Until 2 weeks ago, Nancy was there, engaged and still very much thinking about and caring about the world beyond our doors. The environmental group came about in 2021 when we had a change in administrations. All who are interested are invited to show up and brainstorm ideas for positive environmental actions in our building and in our neighborhood. We showed up. Nancy there again. And her participation in the group was ongoing. I'm hearing today about all the same themes that have been in the Ross family for years, but I did not know that. I learned that Nancy's family I learned things from Nancy's family that should have come as no surprise. While still living in Harlan, a vacancy occurred on the city council, as we've heard, and she was asked to fill out the term. She ran unopposed for the next full term of her own, and her many successful projects among them was a community daycare. Now, I'm not sure if that's the same nursery, but Nancy cared deeply and participated in her community wherever she lived, including here. Sometime after the COVID pandemic subsided, Nancy, Martha Tinker, Steve, and Karen Herwig became a Sunday breakfast foursome, sitting at the same table each week. And there we shared our lives, worldviews, and some of our family's goings on. It was a cherished weekly meetup for each of us with wide-ranging conversations and laughter. Oh yes, lots of laughter. Steve and I do not have grandchildren, but Nancy had all of you. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, who she loved so dearly. You know the joy that your Nana brought to you, but she also brought her joy to Edgewater. She brought her joy to us by sharing pictures from your families, your children, your grandchildren, and you are all lucky ducks to have had such a dear mother and great-grandmother in your lives for such a very long time. We thank you for sharing her with us.
Thank you.
I'm Diane Lawson, and last June, I saw Nancy in Harlan, and she asked me, she said, "I'm just doing fine, but will you play at my service when the time comes?" And so here I am. This was her request. She had heard this done here at Edgewater before, and so I'm going to play her request of Amazing Grace.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now going to sing Johnny Appleseed, which is a song that we sang at family meals. But before we do that, I just want to mention our daughter Sarah, her husband Matt, and our granddaughter Magnolia were not able to make it today because Magnolia came down with a bad bout of the flu. So, hi guys. Please sing with us if you know the song, and then after we're finished, we will make our way to the pub, and then you please join us when you're ready. Come on up, guys.
Oh, come on. Oh, the Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and the rain and the apple seed. The earth is good to me. Amen, 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 amen. Let's eat. Woo-hoo!
Okay. Head for the pub.
Yeah, thank you. Did you turn it on?
Of course, yeah.